Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Faith Focus Weekly Discipleship Podcast. My name is Kevin Rogness, and I'm the Discipleship Director here at Faith Covenant Church. As always, I want to encourage you to subscribe to the podcast, whether you're listening on any of the major podcasting platforms or if you're watching on YouTube. It's also really great if you can leave a review to let us know how we're doing so that we can make sure that we're covering the kind of topics that you want us to cover or to improve, anything that we need to improve. So let us know. You can also email me. My email address is listed in the description of the episode down below. Today, we are joined by our very own Pastor Sara Sosa. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's always fun.
Yeah. We're just here to kind of talk about some parenting stuff because parenting is probably the most important place that discipleship happens.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
I mean, they get the most hours with kids.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, you're kind of biased with your job because that is kind of your job is to help.
A little bit, yeah. Yeah.
But yes, no, it's absolutely a critical time of discipleship. So today we wanted to talk about something called DNA.
Yeah.
And this is not a science. This is not a Bill Nye situation. Sarah's much cooler than Bill Nye.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. I never really liked that show that much. Does that make me weird?
I can't say I ever really watched it.
Yeah.
That doesn't make you weird.
Okay.
That's good.
There are other things that make me weird. So
There might be a few. I don't know.
Yeah.
This is an idea I came up with a while ago. I was just thinking about how every family system is unique. And sometimes we look at our own families and we think there's a lack of something there. And then we do this thing that we do here in the United States where we compare ourselves to other people. We compare our families to one another, our kids to each other's kids, our spouses to our friends' spouses, ourselves to other moms or dads or grandmas or whatever role you have in your family. And when we do that comparison game, we often come up short.
Yeah.
We're just not very kind, I think, to ourselves. And I just found myself wanting to help families understand that just like human beings have a unique DNA, things that make them special, families have the same thing, right? Mm-hmm. It's so many factors coming together. Like, who are the adults in the family system? Is there just one adult? Are there other adults? What are the relationships to the kids? How many kids do you have? What are your kids' personalities? And without boring anybody with family systems theory or
another day.
Yeah, we could do that. Or ecological system theory with Uri Brofenbrenner. That just talks about how, like, you as an individual is in the middle, and there are all these concentric circles outside of you to go with your immediate environment, and then it goes up more and more, and all these different environments. So your immediate environment is basically who you live with.
Yeah.
The next environment is people you see every day, like school or daycare or work or the places you go on a regular basis. And then you can get out of that to communities, like a church community, your sports teams. Mm-hmm. Outside of that, your city, and then outside of that, your state, your country. And each of those spheres have influence on you as an individual in different ways. So, indirectly or directly. So dad has a bad day at work and he comes home and he's crabby because he missed a goal, or his boss didn't like his project, or whatever it is. He's feeling bad about it. He brings that negative energy into the home. Everybody's going to feel it, right? Yeah. And so it impacts the kids. It impacts the wife, just because they're in close proximity. So, when you think of all that kind of stuff, there's just so many variables that impact who we are as a family. But there are a lot of really great things to call out in family systems and in your personal family that I think are worth celebrating. And so that's what we want to talk about today, so the DNA of your family. And it's an acronym.
So, what does it stand for?
Well, discipleship, nurture, and alleluia, which is how you worship. So we'll talk through all three of those. But that's kind of the idea.
So discipleship, nurture, and alleluia. So the first piece with discipleship, one of the definitions that you might see with another way of saying discipleship is discipline. Yep. And so the discipline piece can be kind of defined as training by instruction and exercise to drill, to bring to a state of order and obedience by training and control.
That's an official Merriam-Webster online
Yes.
dictionary definition. Yeah, discipline, we have all kinds of negative feelings around discipline because we think of it as punishment.
Yeah.
And we tend to mostly only think of it that way. And so nobody likes being punished. Nobody likes being told they've done something wrong, and nobody likes accepting the consequences for things they've done wrong. Hence, discipline's negative
Mm-hmm.
overtones. But discipline, really, as a word, is just an opportunity to learn and to grow.
Mm-hmm.
It's to redirect. And so,
Or a plan
um,
to grow,
yes,
following a discipline, a
yes.
spiritual discipline.
So, how you discipline as a family can be life giving,
Mm-hmm.
but it can be that negative side of discipline too, where you're shutting your kids down, you're shutting down their creativity, you're communicating messages you don't mean to communicate. And so, how we do that, like how do we lead our kids? How do we grow? How do we correct? How do we direct? How do we, help them discover how God's wired them to be? And the way we go about that really, really matters.
Mm-hmm.
And so how you do that as a parent, in large part, hangs on how you were parented.
Mm.
So, did you grow up in a family system that was loving and grace filled, or did you grow up in a more authoritarian system where the rule was the rule and there was no bending, and and everybody was about what you can and can't do, and those kinds of systems tend to be really difficult on kids. The opposite of that, a really permissive household where there are no boundaries and no discipline and no redirection, can have just as detrimental of an effect on kids.
Mm-hmm.
So we find studies have shown us that the kids who tend to come off the rails in high school and in college, meaning getting involved on all kinds of risky behaviors, both legal and illegal, tend to be kids who came from predominantly authoritarian homes, or permissive homes,
Mm.
the ends of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
So what you want to do is come to the middle, right? And I mean, it's a blend, right? There are some times when you absolutely have to put your foot down as a parent.
Yeah.
You are not going to look at your kid and say, I'm not sure it's a great idea for you to walk into traffic today, honey.
Right.
Oh, maybe let's not put that key in the outlet.
No,
I think that
no.
there are some things where you're like, no, that cannot happen
You
for your
cannot touch the
safety.
hot stove.
Right, right. So there are times when you are that hard and fast rule that sort of like I was thinking of, like a stoplight. It's the red light. Like nothing goes back here. I get you, kid, and all your curiosity and wonder and wiggliness, but right now, it's not happening. So there are those moments, and then opposite of that are the moments where you can let your kids make all the choices and be exactly who they are and be silly and running and playing and having a great time, and you can really watch their personalities bubble out because you know that the time is right, the space is right, things are
Mm-hmm.
safe, and you can really just let them go. And then the in-between place is like a yellow light. It's a proceed with caution, like pay attention to the intersection, and maybe put the brakes on a little bit. And maybe those are spaces where you collaborate with your kids, and have some conversations about what does it look like to do this? Is this a good choice? And then you begin to sort of mentor and train kind of in that space. So really in a green light space, your kids have control. The red light space, you have all the control. And in a yellow space, it's
Kind of an
more of a
in-between.
collaboration.
I want to come back to something about what you said about understanding the way you are wired personally as you are looking to parent your children. What does that really mean, and how do we bring that into a family situation?
Yeah, I'm actually a pretty big fan of some of these personality tests that are available to us today. Some people don't like them because they feel like they label you or they pigeonhole you, put you in a box. I think they help you understand how God put you together and what's unique about you, and they help you understand some of the other personalities out in the world. And what I have found is not only do I gain insight for myself, but I gain insight for other people. And I begin to understand, that's why that person is so hard for me to be around.
Mm-hmm.
Like I really have to put on my nice hat,
Yeah.
and that's why I love being with this person because we're so like-minded, and you begin to understand. And if you know that about who you are, if your spouse takes the time, if you're in a two-parent home, to do the same, you have a conversation piece. It will help you understand why you approach parenting differently or the same, because it's going to have to do with how you're wired. So if you like personality tests, the ones I like the best, Myers-Briggs has been out there for a long time. It's stood the test of time. It's a good standard. There are 16 personality types in that test, and they're measurements of 4 sort of dichotomies: introversion and extroversion, intuitive thinking. I'd have to remember all the S, sensing. Yeah. Anyway, they're all you're on a scale on 4 different scales: thinking and feeling, and perceiving and judging. So you take the test, and it tells you where you measure in each of those 4 categories, and then your numbers all put together give you a particular type. So that's a good one. The Strength Finders, we've done that here on staff here at Faith Covenant, is a great one. I love Strength Finders because it's so positive. It's focusing on what you're really, really good at, and the idea is, as much as you're able to channel your energy, your job, your parenting, your life through your skill sets, it's going to bring the most satisfaction and joy because you're congruent with how you're put together. If you consistently have to operate in a space that is opposite of the way that you're wired, that's exhausting. It's frustrating. It leads to burnout. All kinds of things. It's very difficult. So, Strength Finders is great. And then another one that's a big hit in the covenant denomination leadership structure is the Enneagram. And Enneagram has 9 different personality types. If you think of the Knights of the Round Table, the 9 numbers are listed around a circle because none of them is better than the other, right? So every number is good, every number is important. There are healthy and unhealthy levels of every number, and there's lots of interplay between the numbers and how they get along. But that one I find to be uncannily accurate.
Really?
It's kind of weird.
I've not spent much time with that one.
Yeah,
I have so many, it's very popular amongst my generation, really. But I still have not quite figured out fully what I took a test recently that I think you made Davey take, and it said I was a 9, a peacekeeper. Does that, from what you know of, does that track for me?
Yeah, or I would have thought maybe a 3. 3s are like
that might have been
people,
one of my wings.
Yeah, 9 is in a triangle with 3 and 6.
Okay.
And so I forget which. So in times of stress, you tend toward another number on the circle, and then times of like, I'm doing great, I'm healthy, everything's great, you can trend toward another. So I'm an Enneagram 5. 5s are researchers, and they're introverted, and they're thinkers. And when I'm not in a good space, I go to 7. 7s are adventurers. They're the people who are they're the party people. They love life. They love the next gathering of people, that super extroverted. But on the backside of them, when they can't be happy, they just really don't like being sad, and they start to sort of like disintegrate, like get overwhelmed. So that's what happens to me when I'm not in my best place. I'm an overwhelmed version of myself. And then when everything's good and I'm in a good space, I go to 8. The 8s are they're power people. They're people who walk in a room and they're there. They get things done. They advocate for the underdog. They're social justice people. They're just really driven. And there's a healthy and unhealthy side of that as well. But anyway, that's a lot of mumbo jumbo about the Enneagram. But it's just it's helpful. And there are 2 books. The Road to You is a small, easily read book that just describes all the numbers. If you don't want to actually pay to take a test, you can do their little quiz that's inside each chapter. The nice thing about Enneagram is you take the test and it'll tell you what the test results say you are, but you don't have to agree with it. So you can actually study all 9 numbers and be like, actually, this one resonates with me. I think I'm this.
Yeah.
And so there's
I
some
remember when I took the
freedom in
Myers-Briggs, I was like, no.
See, Myers-Briggs will tell you you're stuck with what you're stuck with.
Yeah.
But Enneagram puts it in your hands, and I think some people appreciate that. So Anyway, so that book is just a short book. One of the experts behind the Enneagram, Ian Crone, and we'll just tell you about each of the numbers and their personalities and
Mm-hmm.
characteristics. Then there's the row between you and me, which takes Enneagram numbers and puts it into relationships.
Mm.
And so how does this personality type get along with that personality type, and what are they going to be good at together, and what are their challenges going to be? So you can see in a family system where
Mm-hmm.
knowing some of that is helpful. So all of that to say, knowing how you're wired is super important. Even if you don't take any personality tests, just take some time to know yourself. What buttons do your kids push? You know what they are.
Mm-hmm.
Why are they even there? Is that coming from your own childhood? Is something that happened that's not resolved? What do you need to do to stay grounded in a moment like that so you don't fly off the handle? And there are all kinds of techniques for doing that kind of stuff. And just really learning how to be a non-anxious presence on behalf of your kids and the rest of the family gives you a space where everybody feels safe and people feel important, and conversations can happen, and learning can happen, and discipline can happen, and bad ideas can be rerouted toward the good. But if we all get like super wound up, you really do kick in that flight or flight response.
Yeah.
And you shut down your ability to get to your executive functioning as an adult, which means you can't think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're really just reacting,
Yeah.
and most likely reacting badly.
Yeah.
And so, your own personality structure, how you're put together, is going to impact your whole family system, and your kids have their own personalities too that are emerging as they grow.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can watch for some of these things. You're not going to, sit them down and have them take a 100 question test to figure out their personality, but you could see it. You
Yeah.
could see it coming. So
When you can't
that's
just
good.
assume that because you reacted a certain way that your kids will too. Your
Right.
kids are wired differently than you
Yes. Yeah, and no two kids are the same.
are. Right.
Right? So I have a boy and a girl. They're 4.5 years apart. They have a lot of similarities, but they have distinct differences in the way they receive the world and process the world and respond to the world. And I would do best to take that into account in the way I parent them,
Mm-hmm.
which doesn't give you permission to set up systems that are unfair. Your
Mm-hmm.
kids are going to sniff that out in a
Oh,
second
yeah.
if you're showing favoritism to one over the other. But it does give you permission to tailor approaches, structures, consequences to make sense to
Mm-hmm.
each individual kid. And different things will motivate kids. I remember once we tried to take TV away from Emma as a consequence, and her response was, "That's okay, TV's not good for you anyway."
I
For
can
those
just see her
for
saying
those
that.
of you who know Emma, that was the 5-year-old Emma in our house. Yeah, so it wasn't. It We thought it would be
A thing.
a consequence that would be motivational, and it wasn't in the least. So, trying to figure out what matters to kids, both in terms of positive, but also if you need to have, if the situation calls for loss of consequence, it should be something that helps helps the learning process,
Yeah.
right? So, anyway,
So that's all good stuff. So that's the discipline piece.
yeah,
Then nurture. So the definition of nurture is to feed, to protect, to support and encourage, like during a period of training or development. And that's kind of what
yeah,
is going on with kids. We're training them to be adults. We're
Yep.
training them to be disciples of Christ and developing that.
yep.
So how would you talk about that in terms of family?
Yeah. I mean, again, that depends on your family of origin and your spouse's family, meshing those two systems and understanding what was good about the way you grew up, what wasn't good, and what do you want to bring forward together. And once you get on the same page with each other, it's helpful. But so nurturing is this idea of like trying to create safe spaces for your kids to become who they're designed to be. And so a lot of us as parents have hopes and dreams for our kids. Some parents are, known for trying to live vicariously through what their kids are doing. So if I was a basketball player, my kid has to be a basketball player. Well, guess what? Your kid might stink at basketball, or they might be good at it and not like it.
Mm-hmm.
which is also a possibility. So again, trying to set aside your wants in favor of theirs and what will really help them to grow and to flourish. And I think we're going to be doing this in January for Family Life Month on Wednesday nights, a shortened version of a Connected Families class called Discipline That Connects with Your Child's Heart. And it's a parenting philosophy that has to do with grace-based parenting. And there are four messages that you're working to communicate to your kids, and it's sort of a pyramid structure. So the first is foundational, most important, and it goes up from there. You will fail to accomplish the top tier if you don't have the ones underneath in place. So these are the messages. You're safe with me. So you want your kids to know they can come to you, they can be in your presence, they can ask questions, they can make mistakes, and they don't have to be fearful of the fallout of that. So you're safe with me. We need safe environments in our home. The next is you're loved no matter what, right? So God gives us unconditional love. And we mess up all the time, all day long, all week long, all year long. And yet he just loves and loves and loves and corrects and loves, right? And so we want to model that in our family systems too, so that love is something that our kids know as a for sure, for sure, for sure. If we have any hope of our kids bringing their struggles with the world to us to help sort of navigate, these two things, feeling safe and feeling loved, that's what's going to lay the groundwork for your kids wanting to tell you about anything that feels big to them. And that is different to a 5-year-old than it is to a 10-year-old, to a 15-year-old, right? So as they go through ages and stages, the stakes get higher, I think. And then the other two messages are, so you're safe, you're safe with me, you're loved no matter what, you're called and capable. So that is us speaking into our kids what they're good at doing. And it's not always a trait like you're a good baseball player or you're a good artist. It can be more like characteristics of our personalities. You're really thoughtful. You have a lot of empathy. And calling out those pieces of who our kids are that aren't contingent on their performance, but they're parts of how God's put them together. One of the things I consistently told Mateo as he was growing up, he's really observant. And he sees things that other people walk right past and don't even notice. And I've always found that fascinating about him. And I always wanted to see the world through his eyes because he just sees things differently. I think that's a really unique trait. And so to call that out, to name that, and let your kids live into it is really powerful. So you're called and capable. And then the last message is you're responsible for your actions. So that's the discipline piece. That's the redirection piece. But you could see how that is going to be really hard to do well if you don't have safety and love down below, and this idea that your kids are good and can do good things, right? Those three messages before you're responsible for your actions. And then you really can be like, okay, yep, you made a mistake, and you can talk it through. What would you do differently? What do you want to remember for next time? Okay, well, you know that mistake does have some consequences. They might be natural, they might be assigned, depending. And so you can do it in a really calm manner, right? You could be like, so the consequence for not taking out the garbage is, remember, we talked about it as a family, you can't use the Xbox for 2 days, or whatever it is, right?
Right.
And so, but it's not I'm not screaming at you saying, you're a terrible kid, you didn't take the garbage out, no Xbox for you. It's not that kind of delivery. It's really calm, and it's like, yeah, you could have taken out the garbage. You chose not to, and the fallout of that is this. So it's just a whole different way to work with kids from littles all the way up to teenagers. And I think that's the nurture, that's the space you want to help create that's going to allow kids to really grow and flourish with those messages surrounding them and your family. So we're gonna teach about that on Wednesdays in January. We'll follow it up with the full class, 8 weeks as a Sunday school option during the Grow Hours starting in February.
Awesome.
So I just think it's a great philosophy, super helpful
Hmm.
in this family system conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've covered discipline and the nurture
Hmm.
pieces. Then Alleluia, which is
Hmm.
kind of defined as expressing praise, joy, or thanks. How does this fit into the whole
Yeah.
conversation? Like
Yeah.
you said earlier, it's worship.
Yeah, so a lot of us have grown up thinking of worship as only something that happens on Sunday morning, and we really just need to expand our understanding of that. And some people have had that idea shared with them, and they've moved in that direction. And other people maybe have never considered it. So,
Mm.
an act of worship, is I'm trying to remember Pastor Brad's definition: ascribing ultimate
Yep.
worth,
Ascribing ultimate worth towards whatever you're worshiping.
something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So God. So Um, if the only time we give to the God during the week is what happens at Faith Covenant Church on Sunday morning, are we really ascribing ultimate worth to God? Right? So, how do you bring God into the rest of the week? How do you worship God? How do you worship as a family all week long, not just on Sunday morning? And there's lots of ways to do that. There's formal opportunities for that. So maybe you do have a regular family devotion time, or a time when you read a Bible story together or something like that. Maybe you choose to listen to praise music in the car when you have to drive more than a half an hour or something. You can sort of bring these elements in, and then as a parent or an adult in the family system, it's learning how to extrovert your observations of God. So as you go through your life and you see where God's showing up, whether it's in a sunrise or a friend who called unexpectedly, or a song that lifted your spirits, or whatever. God pops in and out of our lives all the time. And you probably notice some of it and probably don't voice most of it.
Mm. Yeah.
Right? So if God did 100 things for you in a day, you might see 50 of those things and you may only talk about 5.
Hmm.
Right? So how do we get more out?
Hmm.
And that's the Alleluia piece too, is how do we um, make sure to share and talk about God things with our kids, so that we're always pointing them up, always pointing them to God, always pointing them to Jesus, as an act of worship, as a family. And I think when we are intentional about that, taking advantage of those opportunities, faith gets passed on in a really authentic way. Yeah. So again, just this worship, the idea of family worship, and you can even ask your kids. Kids are really good at coming up with ideas of ways to honor God or praise God. Could be through serving. You
Hmm.
serve one another as family members. As a family, you go out and do some sort of a tangible thing in your community, a service project of some sort. Partner with one of the things we're doing here at church. There's lots of ways that we can bring God into our daily lives. And um, when we when we say to our kids that God's important, but all they see us do is go to church on Sunday morning, we've not really communicated that God's important. We've communicated that church on Sunday morning is important.
Hmm.
So we really need to be careful of our mixed messages around faith and God. If we say reading scripture is important or knowing the Bible is important, but our kids never see us read the Bible for ourselves, we've just communicated something else to them, right? So it's Alleluia sort of captures all of that stuff too, of being growing as a personal follower of Jesus, and doing that in a way that your kids get to intersect with it, and observe it and see it in real life. That's going to translate into a deeper faith for them than anything else, honestly. And you started by joking about discipleship with families being important, and really uh, there was it was in the early 2000s, a book called Think Orange came out of the children's ministry that is associated with Andy Stanley's church down in Atlanta. And it has a graphic in it, 2 boxes of like contact hours with kids. And so the first box just has like sporadic orange dots scattered around the box, representing the number of hours that we get with kids at church on a regular basis.
Hmm.
Um, And then you flip the page, and the next box is almost all orange because there's so many orange dots in it. There's very little white space left. And that's a representative of the hours the contact hours that parents have with their kids. So when you see those two boxes side by side, you realize discipleship primarily happens in the home, and you are discipling your kids towards something. It may not be God.
Yeah.
Right? So that
Unintentionally
that's
or
the
not,
thing. Right.
you're discipling them towards something.
Yeah, what you say, what you prioritize, what you do is teaching them all the time. And so we're here at church to help you organize that, prioritize that, resource that, encourage you, cheer for you, walk alongside, do some of it with you, do some of it for you when we're teaching a Bible story and that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, there is very little that I can do here, even if you're showing up every week on Sunday and every week on Wednesday, and most people can't swing that. But let's suppose you could. Even with that, what I can give to kids in terms of a lifelong faith is tiny. So the partnership with the home is really what God intended in the first place.
Yeah.
That we're doing this all together, that we're all raising the next generation to know and love Jesus, whether they're our own kids or not. And when we have that full partnership going, everybody benefits. So anyway, but the DNA part, again, it's just like spend some time thinking about what makes your family great. You know, what's unique to who you are? What are the things that, you know, are, I don't know, your traditions or the fun things that you do, the way you laugh together. There's one example. We used to do this. I don't even remember where I heard this idea. It wasn't mine originally, but mystery minivan tour. So we would think of something fun that we knew the kids would want to do. Could be something easy like a hiking trail. Could be stop at Dairy Queen for treats. You know, whatever your family likes to do. And you, in cahoots with your spouse, if you have one, you figure out when you're going to do something. And then out of the blue, when your kids are in the house, you just yell, "Mystery Minivan Tour!" And they're like, you know, and so everybody to the van. And we actually had a minivan, so it worked really well. And
I was
they
gonna
just
say, like, as a kid, my dream car was a minivan because I was
your
so
dream car?
well, because as a kid, I was always stuck between my two brothers in the back seat of the
yeah,
car, and I
fair.
was just like, I just want
You
some
want the
space.
captain's chair.
Yeah, so I was always jealous of the families that did have
Yeah.
the minivan.
Well, we would just load them up, or we would tell them tomorrow night is mystery minivan tour, and that was like agony because they wouldn't know what the mystery was. So anyway, we'd load them up in the minivan and go do whatever it was, and it was just super fun, and just something fun to do as a family. It was a little bit of a crisis when we sold our minivan and got a Pontiac Vibe, because we're like, Mystery Vibe tour?
That sounds weird.
it just wasn't the
That
same.
sounds like you're going to the
it wasn't
nightclub
the
or
same
something.
thing. I know. So anyway.
I do wish someone would say mystery airline tour to me and
that would be super
throw me on a
awesome.
plane and take me to somewhere.
Mystery Island visit. Yeah, we could do
Mystery
a lot
cruise
of
ship
things
tour.
like that.
Okay. I'll
So,
go.
yeah, I'll go. So anyway, it was just something unique we did as a family. Another thing we did, less loved by our children, but you know,
You tried.
we would do ssosa's unplugged.
What,
And so unplugged ssosa's because
okay.
our family name.
Yeah.
So ssosa's unplugged. What we would just announce it and the time frame. So usually it was like after school, so like 4 o'clock until bedtime, which meant nobody used any technology. All of us. So our adult phones were put away, TV off, music, nothing. But we would do other things. We could go for a walk or play games or you know, wrestle on the floor, build a fort. I mean, there's a gazillion things you could do that don't require technology aside from light and heat and stuff. But so it was just a way to back away from our electronics for a chunk of time and really be fully 100% present with one another. So that was another thing that we did that helped define who we were as a family. We started calling ourselves Team Sosa, you know, just to have a little pride behind who we were as family. So lots of things you can do to carve out that DNA. And when you do, and you figure out what are we really good at, what's great about our family system, Then when you're tempted to compare yourself to another family, or if you're mom, you compare yourself to another mom, you have something to back up and say, actually, I don't have to be like that because what
Hmm.
I got here is pretty sweet,
Yeah.
pretty awesome.
So just because you see another family doing something really well and healthy doesn't mean that your family is unhealthy
Yes,
because they're not operating the same
exactly.
way.
But if it's a great idea, steal it.
Yeah.
You know, it's all about sharing the ideas. And so, yeah, I don't know. I really long for families to just love who they are. And my kids would get frustrated. Emma would get frustrated because she was the oldest. And felt like she always had to be responsible. And why does she always have to set an example? That kind of thing. And Mateo would get frustrated because he's the youngest. And why didn't he get to do what his sister got to do? And she gets to stay up later than I do. And blah blah blah. And I just finally said, you know what? I said, our family is the way our family is because that's the way God wanted it. So
Hmm.
for some reason, Emma, he thought you'd be a great big sister. Mateo, he thought you'd be a great younger brother. And those are the roles he gave you. I didn't pick it for you. You didn't pick it for you. It just is what it is. So let's live into that. Let's be the best big sister, the best mom, the best dad, the best
Hmm.
little brother that we can be. And that's resonated with them weirdly. Like I didn't think I said it and I was kind of like, oh, they're gonna look at me like I'm a weirdo or whatever. But somehow it made sense,
Mm.
and it's true, right?
Yeah.
Like nobody gets to pick their role in their family. You're just in it. So try to make the best of it. Now, having said that, totally, fully, completely understand that some family systems are really difficult
Hmm.
for lots of good reasons and lots of bad reasons. And so if you're listening to the podcast today and you find that some of these things don't feel attainable because you feel like your family system is pressured or broken or in pain in some way, I strongly invite and encourage you to reach out for some help in that area,
Hmm.
whether it's a rethink of how you do parenting, if it's a recognition that your relationship with your spouse needs some work. There are ways we can come alongside you at Faith Covenant, help make that happen. If what you need is more on a professional level, we can help you find that professional care and become the healthy family system that maybe you long to have. And that that might not be an easy road, but it's a worthwhile road.
Hmm.
And so if you feel like that's who you are today, as you're listening to all of this, and you want to be in a better place, but you're not sure how to get there, um, stop by, call, text, email, however you want to get hold of us.
Hmm.
Um, we'd be happy to enter that journey and that conversation with you. Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's kind of the nutshell of what DNA can mean. It's the discipline, the nurture, and the alleluia. Any closing thoughts that you want to wrap up with?
I don't think so. I just think, go for it. Just
Yeah.
live into who God made you to be, who your kids are, who you are as a family, and um, just, just so much junk in the world. Why put extra junk on your shoulders, right?
Right.
Extra stress, extra anxiety. Just let it go and learn to really, really appreciate what you have.
Absolutely.
It's good. Yeah.
Well, I'm very grateful that Pastor Sarah could join us because I'm not a parent, so I know very little about parent. I only know
You've
about
been parented, though.
I have, but I only know of parenting by observation. I don't
Yeah.
know it by experience the way that you do,
Yeah.
and the way that you've come alongside so many families that are doing that. So
Yeah.
we are grateful for your experience and for your willingness to share that with
Yeah.
us. So
One other quick thing,
yeah,
if I could say, and this is maybe toward the part of parenting where your kids are getting older, like heading toward middle school and high school. There are a lot of stereotypes out in the world about middle schoolers and high schoolers and
yes,
teenagers, and we do a lot of
and some of them are
big
true.
breaths. Yeah, we do a lot of big breaths and a lot of rolling our eyes and a lot of expecting our kids to just be really terrible versions of themselves for a
Few
certain
years.
set of time. And definitely there are changes that are coming. But just because the stereotypes are out there does not mean that you have to embrace those stereotypes.
Hmm.
And I just say that because sometimes when we anticipate something, we almost allow it to happen,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
And your kids might go through adolescence just fine,
Hmm.
right? Like,
I was
yeah,
great.
some of the drama, like there's stuff that's just going to be there, but by and large, they'll probably be fine. But if you're sitting there expecting them to be disrespectful to you, and disrespectful to their friends. And if they behave that way and you think, oh, it's just because they're teenagers and you don't correct it, you don't hold a better standard, you're helping them become that thing that you dreaded having in your home. And you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
So just something to chew on and think about. But I sort of was like, I'm not going to embrace the terrible two stereotype. And my kids were great 2-year-olds.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not going to embrace the stereotype that you can't travel with your kids. I took my kids all over the place on buses, trains, airplanes, cars. They traveled great, and I know too, some kids have challenges more so than others. And so there's a spectrum of things here. But again, I think when you invite certain things and you just think it's a foregone conclusion, you kind of might short circuit something that you didn't need to short circuit. So
Sounds good.
here.
Well, let me know when the next mystery minivan tour is.
Oh, we don't have a
and-
minivan. I have a Altima
Well,
now.
Well, then the next mystery Ultima tour.
Mystery Ultima tour. Yes. I
So.
saw on the way in today, you could cut this if you don't want it. Somebody was driving a crossover, like, the mini SUV crossover, but it was a Jaguar. And
Yeah.
I thought, if you had enough money for a Jaguar, why would you buy a crossover?
Because Jaguar makes crossover now, isn't there?
I know.
They're probably good cars. I don't know.
I don't know. I just thought, get like a RAV4 or something. Or get a fancy Jaguar.
Well, that's a whole other podcast. So next week we'll be talking about crossovers and SUVs
there you
with
go.
Pastor
Which
Sara
is
Sosa.
so important for family
Yes.
life and church life and
Yes.
faith in general. So.
Yes. What car does
Or
God
not.
want me to buy next when my lease runs out?
Right. There you
Yeah.
go.
Probably not a Jaguar. I'm not in that price bracket.
What do you mean? Pastors make millions.
I'm not technically a pastor yet.
Oh, see? Yeah, go get your credential.
Yeah.
Then you can have the Jaguar.
Working on it. So.
Okay, fantastic.
Well, thank you so much for listening or for watching.
That's
Just
good.
let us know if you need anything. Again, my email is in the episode description, and I'll put Pastor Sarah's in as well if you have questions about family stuff and want to talk directly to Sarah. So thank you so much for watching and listening, and I hope you have a wonderful and blessed day.